shapes of God. He says it's the differences that are important. That's what makes you unique from
But you already said that this couldn't be through human, but it would be through something else.
Yeah. Well, that's
What's the something else, baby?
The idea of the Lord breathing life
I just
into
got
it
some of those cheese.
is getting the similarities, is getting the spirit of God.
the mind.
Yeah, that
Soul.
essence, that in fact, the word that is used in Hebrew for breath is the same as used for spirit and life. So that's where we differentiate from the animals. You know, when they talk about are things done humanely? Well, it's in reference to us. It's how you would treat a human being. Are you treating it the same way? And so that's where you get that reference from. There's a lot of problems with his logic there, and Art pointed out one of them there, but it's that empirical thinking there. It's that in science, when you really do science, I don't know how many of you took science in college, where you actually had to do an experiment, and in the experiment, it followed a logical pattern. You started here with a premise, and you put things together, and you said, this is what you think will happen, and then you took steps to either prove it or disprove it. And that was the steps you took. That was the scientific method right there. Now, what he's doing is he's taking a series of steps, and he's saying, in this, when we work backwards with the human genome, if you want to get these variations, you have to do this. And if you're going to go all the way back with this group, you've got to have this. And that's his premise. That's his premise. And when he works his system together, when he takes those steps, he's going to come up with that. And that's true. That can be true. However, you know, one time my ex-mother-in-law, she drove from Bakersfield to Santa Barbara. I don't know, it took her 3 hours or something like that. But she got a speeding ticket. And she was arguing with the policeman that she doesn't deserve this speeding ticket because it took her 3 hours to get to Santa Barbara. So if you take the mileage and you take the number and you do the simple arithmetic, rate over time equals distance, you would get that she couldn't have traveled the speed he was saying she traveled.
That's if she kept in the car all the time.
If she kept in a car and
Below the speed limit.
Always
kept at a constant speed. Look at all these interesting variables here.
Variables.
Common sense variables, because we all drive and we all know how those things can be slightly tweaked, can't they? So if you take our friendly scientist's premise here and says all of this lines up this way as long as you don't change anything, and you're going to need 10,000 people in the beginning here to start this, then Adam and Eve is wrong. But there's lots of other variables here that you're not even considering. You don't have all the evidence. You're just taking a given set of circumstances and you're projecting on that, and you're saying this is how it has to be in these given empirical environment. And we can say, yes, that's probably true. However, you're not considering all the variables that can be put into this equation. I mean, his equation doesn't even explain the Cambrian period explosion, when all of a sudden there's no life, and then all of a sudden there's this big diversity of life. Well, how are you going to explain that with your straight, linear, empirical evidence? You can't. It doesn't make any sense. Something happened along there. Remember when I was talking about that equation in that last week or so, when I said the scientist wrote this big, elaborate equation, and then he had a big, elaborate solution, and then in the middle it says, something special happens here. And the other scientist walks in and goes, I got a question about your equation. Well, that's the same thing we should have here. That's a cute joke, but it's the same thing that's happening here. We said, wait a minute, you know, there's parts that are missing here. And you're telling us we have to throw out everything that we believe because you've taken and extrapolated this equation. I'm sorry, I'm not going to do that. Unless you can show me all the empirical evidence that brings us from day one to now, everything in a straight line, and show me how it all exactly works, I can't accept that.
You know, it's similar to the Big Bang Theory, where there's math sufficient today to get down to 10 to the minus 43rd second. But you can't get that final step
Yeah.
down to the thing
The one
that caused it all. So
thing
it's lack of
missing.
knowledge that prevents that. It doesn't say it's not gonna be proven someday if it already hasn't. But there's a lack of knowledge here to get below the 10,000. Now, how long have they known the general? He said 20 years.
Well, I keep going back about 30, 40 years ago, and they were talking about the world is getting colder and colder and
Yeah.
and now, oh no, that was wrong. Now we're going hotter and hotter. Well, that's not quite right. There's climate change, which means absolutely nothing. You getting excited over there, Art?
There's a couple of things about that. You know, they trying to get back to zero. Now you're talking about the creation of the universe itself, and they keep throwing out all these different ideas, like the multiverse. The multiverse is the concept that we kind of like an amoeba or something broke off or were created by another universe. But all that does is move the problem. It doesn't solve the problem. It's like saying, well, where did you come from? And you say, oh, my parents. Well, that doesn't answer the question, does it? You know, it just moves it a little bit, moves it a generation.
Von Däniken had the solution a few years ago. It was people from outer space.
Yes,
And it created us.
and several scientists have suggested that. It's called transpermia. You move the life form from one planet to another, or at least the seeds of life, or the elements that are necessary to make life exist. You move it from one place to another. But again, what does that do? It just moves the problem to another planet. It doesn't. You know, there was a whole movie about, you know, our life came from Mars before Mars died. Okay, if it did, then where did the life come from Mars then? You know, I mean, it doesn't solve anything. It just moves it around a little bit.
This is what Al Gore said the other day too. He says that we're going to be invaded from outer space. They're going to annihilate us, and we deserve it.
Okay. Yeah. And let's see. And also, let's see. I heard one about the creation of the universe was caused by a quantum flux, which just means that there was a ripple in quantum mechanics, the quantum fields. There was a fluctuation in it that caused our universe to come into existence. Except, the problem with that is, in order for a quantum flux to exist, you've got to have time. And there was no time in this universe before this universe. So all of those things came into being when God gave birth to this universe. And God released it into existence.
I think too, and I don't know if this fits in or not, but wasn't there a great adjustment in most everything at the time of the flood? Because when you talk about people prior to the flood living 200 years for a lifetime, and I don't think that was so true after the flood. Language was different, age, length of time that you live is different, a whole lot of things adjusted. So if we keep trying to measure and follow all the way back to creation, there's a big
Well, that's a good point. That's a good point, because if you listen to, well, even in the part that we just heard, this about half of it, in that he said 4,000 years. There's not enough time in 4,000. Well, that's just one Christian view. Mm-hmm. Not all Christians hold to a young earth belief.
right.
And if you, I don't hold to a young earth belief. I don't think you do either, do you, Art? No.
I definitely don't.
Okay, and it's not unreasonable to believe that the earth is older than that time. And how they got those numbers, I'm not discrediting my brothers who believe that,
Right.
but I'm just pointing out to them that how they got those numbers is open to interpretation, because when you go through genealogies, the genealogies that we read in the Bible are not designed for time. They're not set up to say, this is going to tell you time.
Right.
They're designed to show relationship.
Yeah. And the word day itself, you know, it could be a 24-hour day, or
Yo.
it could be the day of Abraham, or
Yo.
the day of this. It's the same word.
Especially if you go pre-David. Pre-David especially, they'll use it for era and other types of periods. It could be a 12-hour period, or like a work day,
Yeah.
versus a 24-hour day, versus a period of time like the day of the Romans. It doesn't. It's an era, and they used it for that. And as you study Hebrew, you see them do that a lot. I mean, just think of the word shalom. The word shalom is used a lot. I say shalom to you, it could be hello, it could be goodbye. If I say ma shlomach, I'm saying how are you to Nacho, and the word shalom, and if you transliterate that, it would be how is your peace, and they're using that word for as a condition of how you are right now. And of course, we all know the word shalom means peace. So there's 4 definitions for you right there, just in that one word. And since their language has, and if you ever encounter a Jewish person, they're sensitive to this, so don't say it, but they have a small vocabulary. And they make a really interesting use of it. They manipulate the words around, and they add new meanings to them. And as my instructor pointed out to me on several occasions, our language is expanding all the time to include new things and new applications. And that's true, it is. They make up new words all the time. And some of them, you go, wow, where did that one come from? And just asking that question is a whole lesson in itself. But so, you know, just those concepts are really important. Okay, anybody else have any thoughts about this?
I have a question.
Sure.
In the day of Methuselah,
Uh-huh.
he lived, what, 900 years?
Right.
I mean, there's a whole bunch of these guys that were supposed to live 700 to 1,000 years.
Mm-hmm.
You know, yeah, and I said, oh no, that can't be, because 150 years ago, life expectancy was like 50 years.
Right.
So how can you put these two things together?
How can you reconcile that?
No, I can't.
If there's
I'm asking you.
Okay.
If there's a perfect gene pool, 4,000 or 10,000 years ago, let's throw time out of it. Those people could have lived that long with a perfect gene that pool that did. What are they going to say about that in another 1,000 years when we live 900 years?
Hmm.
Because they've perfected the gene pool, and we now live another 900 years. It's possible. It could have happened way back then, and then we degraded the gene pool, and of course then we shortened all our lives, especially with wars and turmoil and all the other factors.
Well, just the stuff that we eat today and the environmental conditions alone. I mean, if you just think of one thing, just think of cinnamon rolls. Timing does everything, Ed. No, not cinnamon rolls. Actually,
Poo on you, I better have a second one.
you don't plan to live 900 years anyways, right? There. All right. I think Dr. Ross mentioned beef especially, and the heavy elements that are in beef. And as we eat those heavy elements accumulate in our body, and they will shorten our lives. However, how much will they shorten it? Well, by doing half-life experiments, in other words, doing the radioisotopes experiments and following these elements through our body, it can see how much the accumulation is. And basically, from his studies, I think Dr. Rana did the study. But anyways, he's one of Hugh Ross's co-workers.
They're all in the organization.
Yeah.
They have their specialties.
Yeah. In fact, at the end of this, Faz Rana actually speaks at the end of this and addresses that
He's
question.
in this piece of
Good. I'm glad I got into the transcript. That the accumulation of these things will eventually kill you, but the amount that you would get, it wouldn't be toxic till you're about 200 years old. Well, I kind of think that I'm going to die before then. You know, it's just the way it generally works. But you can kind of see that there are environmental pressures that do determine how long we're going to live. So if you start eliminating those, like you become a vegetarian and things like that, you can add time to the approximate time that you're going to live. So it's not unusual to be able to project that you'll live longer if you start taking away the environmental conditions that would hinder you, the genetic conditions that would hinder you, the nutritional elements that would hinder you, all those things, and so you can increase your life expectancy. So added those to I think I mentioned genetics, but add those with the genetics, you could increase, it's possible to have a much longer life, and if it was a much more pure gene pool, with you have the ability to withstand disease and things like that, it's not unreasonable to think of a lifespan being longer. In fact, the things that they talk about in Scripture that sometimes people question. How about the giants in
San Francisco Giants? You talking about?
The giants that are mentioned throughout the Bible and various
Goliath.
Goliath, for example, is a very common example. They've actually found some bones of human beings that date back to those periods of people being at least 7 feet tall or more.
We got 7-footers now.
But back then, how tall were people? Back then, how tall
They
were
were
people?
short. They
People
were
like
me.
some people were like 4'8" to 5 foot. So if someone was 7 feet tall, I mean, you're almost 3 feet taller than those. 2 to 3 feet taller, you would be considered a giant compared to them. And so these kind of things that they're mentioning, they need to be doing more research in the direction of trying to find out the truth instead of just trying to overturn everything and say, you guys are fools and you should just not accept any of this stuff. Only thing, when you do something like that, that just makes people mad. I mean, that just makes me want to hunker down. This guy here who calls himself a Christian and he's doing research, when you come out and you throw stuff at people like that, well, you got to come into the 21st century and bring your religion with you into the 21st century and get rid of this stuff. Well, all of a sudden the hair stands up on the back of my neck and I hunker down. I'm not having lunch with you, Jack. We're going head to head. And so I just wish that they wouldn't, at least if they're going to bring this kind of information out, at least do it in a little better format, because that's just not good.
Well, we have to think of that too when we're debating people about these issues.
That's important.
We just can't be so obnoxious that we think we know it all.
That's right. Some of the things are difficult, though. In fact, did anybody besides Gary, sorry, Gary, I love you. Besides Gary, that I gave the lists to today, did anybody else see the lists of the debate stuff? Okay, what I'm trying to do is at 10:30, since we generally start off this way, I'm going to bring out these controversial issues. I got, do you remember what was on the list? I said, is there a place for homosexuality in the church? Should women be ordained? Is abortion always murder?
I left them in. I passed it all out, but about maybe 10.
Okay.
And they're in the sanctuary for the second service.
Okay. It's all right. But anyways, what I'm going to do is we'll start off the class at 10:30 every week that way, and not only just you, but I'll bring up Facebook and Twitter, and we'll try to talk to other Christians and see what they're thinking on it too at the same time. And maybe we can all talk with them and us all together, and we can discuss these issues and where they're going, and see if anybody's on the blogs and all of that. We can bring other people in on to this. So we'll do that, and we'll see how that works, and we'll see how much time it takes to do it all and allocate time for it. And if you have any other ideas on other subjects, things that will, like I told Nacho, throw firecrackers into the fire.
Well, I think not a study, but some comment on modernism and postmodernism.
There you go.
And
That's a
when
good
they
one.
started and what the beliefs are.
Sure.
And what's different today than used to be. Because everything that's coming off now is post-mod.
Yeah. I mean, people talk about it as post-Christian too. Okay. Yeah, be sure to give me your ideas on that so I can put it in the bulletin. As you might have noticed, they edit the bulletin now. They edit out stuff that I put in there. I try to give you guys a lot of information about what I'm doing, what's going on, and sometimes it gets edited out. So let me know. Okay, we are in Isaiah 50, and we were on we finished 6. Now, I think one of the important things about Isaiah here, and this really shows it as it kind of switches back and forth between, sometimes it sounds like, well, is that Isaiah kind of commenting? Is he speaking directly from the Father? Some of the stuff sounds like when it makes a reference to the Messiah, is it actually coming from a pre-incarnate Jesus? If the perspective that I generally hold on this is to try to just hold on to the God Father. Father, God the Father. Try to hold on to just God the Father. And then let it come from anything else. Anything else can kind of arise from that. But if you hold the point of view that God the Father is speaking, generally you'll be okay. Because even if it's coming from Jesus, well, most of the time that's what Jesus was saying anyways. This is what my Father says. So you're still okay that way. It doesn't, because a lot of times you start reading this, you go, I don't know who the heck is speaking here. I'm getting lost. Well, it's always God the Father, and He's directing you either towards the Son or through the Holy Spirit or some action that needs to be taken, and the prophet is acting as the mouthpiece. You're still okay. Kind of keeps you centered. Let's see. All right. I'm going to ask somebody to read here. Just read the 4 verses here, 7 through 10 of verse 50. Who would like to read? Okay. Sure. Thank you.
Because the sovereign Lord helps me, I will not be disgraced. Therefore have I set my face like flint, and I know I will not be put to shame. He who vindicates me is near. Who then will bring charges against me? Let us face each other. Who is my accuser? Let him confront me. It is the sovereign Lord who helps me. Who is he that will condemn me? They will all wear out like a garment. The moths will eat them up. Who among you fears the Lord and obeys the word of his servant? Let him who walks in the dark, who has no light, trust in the name of the Lord and rely on his God.
Toast to that. What did I say, George? I said to her, toast to that.
Thank you very much.
Good, thank you. Tada is just thank you. But if I say tov, it means good, thank you. You know, a good way for kids to remember tada is ta-da! In fact, Barbara was in there. She was preparing the lemon juice, and she was telling me that her granddaughter was studying Hebrew. And I said, well, you know, do you speak any Hebrew? And she says, no. And I said, well, when she leaves, you can say lahitaot. And she goes, what? And I said, lahitaot. That means see you later in Hebrew. And she says, oh, I'll never remember that. I go, think of it like lots of oats. Oats, like oatmeal, right? And she goes, lots of oats. Lahitaot. I remember that. And she's dancing around going, lahitaot, lahitaot, lahitaot. But it's kind of funny because, you know, you do kind of, as you know, as you get older, your memory's not so good, and I continue to study Hebrew, and so I've got to think of all these little tricks to try to remember this kind of stuff. And of course, seeing Barbara dance around, I'm never going to forget that.
Lots of oats.
And lahita oat, yeah, lots of oats.
I reached the oats.
And but one thing that really stuck in my mind when I was trying to learn the animals, the word for fish is dug. And I imagine, now how can I remember that? How about Doug swimming in a fishbowl? It looks like Mr. Lipid. Yeah, that'll stick.
That isn't very fitting.
Yeah, okay.
I'm surrounded.
Once again, as we digress. All right, there is some interesting stuff though in here. Let's see, you are going to like in verse 7, you know, as you look at the Hebrew in here, what comes to my mind is the personality of God in this. That he is showing himself once again an element of his personality. And I see, you know, when you look through the Hebrew, like let's see the word here, let's see the first verse here. Where's verse 7? Read verse 7 again.
Okay.
Yeah, just read it.
Because the sovereign Lord helps me, I will not be disgraced.
Okay, I will not. I am actually. If we look up the Hebrew word here, we see the lambda and the aleph, so that makes the word lo, and the word lo in Hebrew means no. So that whole sentence fragment that you got there, that I am not, is simply lo in Hebrew. So the translators, when they're putting this together, they're putting in all of these words. They're putting in all that piece of section there, that sentence fragment. I am not disgraced. The I am not, that's just one word, lo. So you've got to know the kind of the personality of the person that you're translating this to. We really discovered that when we translated the Sermon on the Mount in one of my classes. You really get to know the personality of Jesus when you're doing that, because you know when you start to translate the words, you start saying, "Well, Jesus wouldn't say it that way." Well, how do you know? You know. Well, I guess you're being touched by the Holy Spirit a little bit to make that kind of translation, aren't you? And you have to be. So you really want people who are in the Spirit when they make those kind of translations. So as I look through this, you know, I don't see. In fact, I've had many of my instructors comment when they'll say, "Well, King James is wrong here. They just didn't translate that right," you know. And so I'm going, "Whoa, okay, really?" And but this one here, this translation, this is an NIV translation, and as I look through it, I can see what the translators were struggling with, and they've got to make this work in English. So now you've got to make it work in English, and you've got to start adding words in there. Now you're putting the words in the Lord's mouth. And you want to make sure you know the personality of the Lord. You want to make sure you know his message. You want to make sure you know the context of what's going on here before you start doing that. Because look at all of the young disciples that are going to walk up and open this up, and they're going to read that verse that you just read. They're going to read that and say, "This is the word of the God. This is the word of my Lord God. This is the word that he's as a transcendent message that it was given to the people of Israel and now is given to me as a message." Part of history and part of a message to me as how my behavior should be done to conduct myself as a good Christian. So there's a lot of responsibility. Wait, you want that kind of responsibility on your shoulders to do that translation? Hello? That's a lot of responsibility. That is a lot of responsibility. Because you know, when you die and you go and you face the Lord, and he said, "I got a special conversation I want to have with you." You know when you were translating?
I did my best, Lord.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Better hope so. You
Therefore I
know.
have set my face like flint. What's that mean? Is that like you've got a tight jaw or what?
Okay, well let's take a look at that. Let's take a look at that. We're going to pull all this stuff up here.
That's in verse 7.
Yeah, we're going to pull all this stuff up here. Had it.
Therefore I have set my face.
I made notes on that.
Pardon your heart?
That's stone.
Yeah.
That's stone.
That's an expression when you.
Well, my King James help, it says that means to be courageous.
Steadfast.
Yeah.
Like flint. Flint is hard.
Yeah, what do you use flint for?
My face. Why are you slinging your face? Harden my face. It makes sense.
Your heart and attitude has to be firm in your belief.
So your face is not really your literal face,
No.
it's your presence.
That's right.
Okay, now I can understand that a little bit.
I don't know why my computer runs so slow today.
I can understand that. I know I won't be put to shame. If the Lord is helping me, I
Yes.
who am I
Yeah,
to be ashamed?
again, at King James is kind of interesting in this verse, because the first part of it says, therefore I shall not be confounded. And they say that means ashamed, I shall not be ashamed. But as you read the second part of it, it says, I shall not be ashamed. So the translator here has used the same word with two different definitions.
Confounded and shamed.
Yep.
I've got a parallel Bible at home, and it weighs probably 10 pounds, that's why I never bring it. But it's interesting to see, 90% of it is just pretty much exact. But once in a while, you'll see a verse that changes between the four, just slightly, not much, but it
Gives
can.
it a different meaning.
Now, why would that be? Why would they be so similar? Because the,
Same guys.
the translators are using those as references, probably. I know we did.
Well,
7.
you can't do it all on your own, that's for sure.
Because the sovereign Lord helped me, I will not be disgraced. Therefore have I set my face like flint. I know I will not be put to shame. The servant resolutely pursues his mission and ignores discouragement because his love is greater than the shame he is suffering. The attitude is seen in God's prophets as well as in Jesus Christ. The cross loomed before him. Cross reference in Ezekiel 3:8 and Luke 9:51.
Jerry, last night I was reading in Daniel, 2nd chapter of Daniel, which you're an expert on.
Right.
Anyway, they said that was written originally in Aramaic. I don't know whether you caught that, but it's one of the few parts of the Bible that was written in Aramaic.
Well, it had to be because it was 900 BC or something, like 700 or something.
Yeah, but the rest of it was written
Yeah,
in
but Aramaic
Greek, I
is,
think.
Aramaic is still in use.
Well, yeah, but I,
Parts.
Not much.
And that's what Christ probably spoke,
Right.
was Aramaic.
Yeah.
well, there wasn't much Greek or Hebrew
At that
700
time.
years ago.
Yeah.
Well, the Hebrew come in pretty early, I beg your pardon, the Greek came in pretty early. But it didn't get down to Palestine really until after Alexander
Took it.
and his generals divided up that area.
And they were more academic than the Hebrews, who were just kind of wanderers and so that's why we got so much from Greek.
There's a Greek city close to Nazareth too, Sepphoris. So there's speculation that Christ probably went to Sepphoris and was exposed to Greek. There's a lot of things that are said that may or may not be true, but this is logical. If the city was there, it was Greek, then probably some of the neighbors there spoke Greek.
Yeah.
6.
About Attila the Hun, what did he speak?
Hunnish.
Hunnish, huh? He was from Hunesian. Hunesian.
Well, he was from the Far East, wasn't he? So
Yeah.
whatever they spoke over there at that time.
Khufu.
I never really speculated on that.
I'm glad you brought that in.
Well, then there's, what is it, the Conqueror, was he now? The guy before him?
Yep.
Alexander?
Oh, no, was it? No, that's right, Attila the Hun was after Alexander.
Genghis Khan,
Yeah,
and
Genghis
before
Khan.
that.
There was a bunch of them that brought elephants over the Pyrenees and,
Oh, that
That was Alexander, wasn't it?
no, that was, what's his name, from Carthage? Hannibal.
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 And he was Greek, wasn't he?
No, he's African.
Oh, really?
Yeah, came from
Carthage in Libya, wasn't it?
Pardon?
Wasn't that Libya then?
Yeah, I think it's in that area anyway.
you call that the dawn of civilization, is that what they?
Well, Carthage was very famous during that era.
Does anyone have
Tried to
a,
conquer it 3 or 4 times.
anyone have a Strong's and Strong's cross reference in the back of their Bible?
Does it have a timeline in it, I mean?
No, that has the cross reference numbers.
I got it on my computer.
Yeah, just a little while, but mine's running so slow.
Jerry, you were raised in the church? Was your dad a pastor?
No.
Your son is a pastor.
Yeah.
Does the word flint give you a cross-reference in anybody's Bible? Yeah.
Well, I've got a reference there that takes the phrase, set my face like flint.
Okay.
Versus
Seven.
7B or whatever you want.
Yeah, I think it's just,
Second half of
I
seven.
didn't know why it's running so slow, but anyways.
Where are your grandkids?
It's not something I will not
they're out
be disgraced like
on
Lord.
the Channel Islands camping.
It says, because the sovereign Lord helps me, I will not be disgraced. Therefore have I set my face like flint. I will not be put to shame. In other words, he won't be changed. He's been set by the Lord. The Lord has helped him. To be disgraced, to be dishonored.
But what are you referring to now?
Back to 7. The beginning of 7.
Disgraced is what they mean by flint? Is that what you're saying?
Is what?
He won't be
He won't be.
disgraced. He won't worry about.
He's not going to worry about it. He's been
Opinions.
set. It's solid like flint. It's been set that way.
Okay. Yeah,
I will not be put to shame. I will not be disgraced.
we don't have any comment on flint in that chapter, but it does refer to us to Ezekiel chapter 3, and
Verse
they
eight.
use the word flint again.
Verse 8 and 9.
Yeah.
What does it say?
Belief in God is not a crutch for those too weak to stand on their own. God makes his followers strong enough to stand against anything or anyone, including those who hate what is right. Just as God gave Ezekiel tough faith, parenthesis, harder than flint, in the parenthesis, tough faith, harder than flint. He wants to give you the stability, perseverance, and insight you need to live up to the great task he's given you. Give yourself over to God's conditioning, and let him get your life in shape.
That's a good verse.
Yeah, that is
That's a
good.
great verse.
That's a comment, that's a footnote, that's not an actual.
Oh, that's part of, that's not,
Yeah.
what part was
the verse
the,
refers to 3, 8, and 9, but I will make you as unyielding and hardened as they are. I will make your forehead like the hardest stone, harder than flint.
yeah.
Do not be afraid of them or terrified by them, though they are a rebellious.
So there's kind of a little bit of a problem there. It's kind of what you were talking about earlier, Ed, when you're talking about we don't want to become like them, like we're talking about that scientist. We don't want to be like them and just throw our stuff out there and be hard and unsensitive hard.
You're not going to convert anybody.
You're not going to convert anybody. You're not going to help anybody. But on the flip side of it, when they throw stuff at you, you got to be ready and strong enough to take it and handle it appropriately.
Let me see your flinty hat face.
Last one time, the instructor implied or said that when you're conversing with someone and you don't like the answer they gave, you say, how did you come to that conclusion?
Where the flint did that come
Why?
from?
Why? Question.
Well, flint was used by.
And that's kind of an apologetic approach too. That's kind of the what was that bumbling detective's name?
Oh,
Big Panther.
No.
Well, he certainly was.
No.
Columbo.
Columbo. That's the Columbo approach to apologetics, where you say, you know, you go, excuse me, just 1 minute, excuse me. I don't want to bother you, but I got just one question, just one look. Excuse me, it just keeps buzzing around in my head. One little question, you know. And then you
How
just
the
keep,
heck did you come up with that stupid question?
yeah, and you just, you know. excuse me for being simple, but you know, I'm not a scientist, and I just got one simple little question about this theory that you're proposing here. And then you just keep asking them questions. And now the idea here actually goes to another type of apologetic called lifting the roof off the house. And what you're actually doing is, and this is, for example, the scientist, you're lifting the roof off of what he's built here. And you're looking at the components and you're saying, well, can you explain this to me? You know, I don't understand this. And I don't understand this part here. And how does this all work? And usually when you start pulling those parts out and asking how that all works, you know, all of a sudden they get a little uncomfortable, because when you wrap it all up in a big present or a big house, then it's all enclosed and protected in a nice big package, and everybody just stands back and goes, ooh, that's
Wow.
nice. Yeah. But when you pull it apart and say, let's look at all the parts, then it can be difficult.
See all the termites in there.
Yes. I've designed an engine, and I'm trying to get it patented. And I think this occurred from me working on jets. You know, those things keep buzzing in the back of your head. And believe you me, I know about people looking at parts and scrutinizing them. And it kind of just makes me think about the apologetics and everything. It goes back to all of that, you got to have all that lined up and ready to have somebody scrutinize it. I got to share the blueprints with you, George, on that engine. See, get your
He'll put it
opinion.
in his airplane.
What kind of engine?
Well, it's an engine that's never been built before. It's called a spline engine.
Is it called a Carno engine?
A what?
Carno?
No,
Oh, okay. Sorry. Spline engine?
spline engine.
Did you see what happened at Reno yesterday?
I'd like to see that.
I think you'd find it interesting.
External combustion or?
Internal. Okay, let's see. Did we do? Let's see. I'm done 8 yet. 8. Would you read that again?
7?
8.
8? Okay, sure. He who vindicates me is near. Who then will bring charges against me? Let us face each other. Who is my accuser?
Now back in 6, it was talking about. Wasn't that the one where it was talking about the Messiah? Or was that 5 or 6? 5, talking about the Messiah, and you know, you're kind of thinking, who is speaking here a little bit? Who's speaking? But now, when we move forward like this, it's real easy to see God the Father speaking, because this is the kind of language he used. Remember, very early on when they were talking about in Isaiah, when they were talking about the idols, and he was telling them, he was putting them kind of in a court and saying, let's look at this. These idols that you're worshiping. Now, this is kind of the same kind of demeanor, same kind of language that he's using here as well. He who vindicates me is near. Who then will bring charges against me? Let us face each other. Who is my accuser? Let him confront me. Who is my accuser is the question that suggests confidence in God and in the integrity of his own character. The language is taken from the transaction in the courts of justice, just like I was talking about. And it is a solemn call on any who would dare to oppose him to enter into a trial and allege the accusations against him before a tribunal of the holy God. Let us face each other. Is the seat of judgment as in a court. This is cross-referenced back in Isaiah 1:18 and in Romans 8:33. And what does it say in Romans 8:33? The Roman road. The Roman road.
Romans 8:33.
Yes.
Who will bring any charges against those whom God has chosen? It is God who justifies.
If you truly believe in God and you truly want to glorify him, I mean, that should be one of the things that's in the back of your mind. And those who don't, that's the thing that you would remind them of, that ultimately they will be judged that way. Okay, 9. It is a sovereign God who helps me. Who will condemn me? They will all wear out like a garment. The moths will eat them. They will all wear out like garments is a reference to the servant's opponents. The servant's opponents who appear to mock and strike him with impunity. They will eventually be judged, and like a moth-eaten garment, come up with nothing. And that's cross-referenced in Job 13:28 and Isaiah 41:10. Anyone close to Job?
Job 31?
Yes, sir.